So today we're fortunate to have with us Molly Hanson, who has a real special leadership role in the state of Iowa. We're grateful to have her as our guest as we talk about leadership matters for a changing world and through the University of Dubuque. So Molly, I want to welcome you and tell me, what do you do?
Thank you.
What do you do?
Well, as of April of this year, I'm the executive director for Iowa Rivers Revival, and we are a nonprofit river advocacy group.
So if we've got a lot of millennials, kind of our demographic is fairly broad and expansive in this blog, but if somebody wants to contact you or your organization, how do they do that?
Absolutely. We've got a website. It's not beautiful yet, but it will be by the end of next year. It's www.iowrivers.org. Most of our information is on there. We do have a Facebook page now as well. But we're a fairly small organization. We have myself and my assistant director as staff, and everyone else that's involved is totally volunteers.
So there's a story here. I mean, you didn't sort of, or maybe you did. How did you get into this? I mean, there are a lot of rivers in Iowa. There are a lot of streams in Iowa. So, I mean, did you grow up wanting to do this, or how did you come into this work?
Not necessarily. I grew up wanting to do a lot of different things, but when I really got into sort of the conservation in Iowa was through the County Conservation Board system. So in Iowa, we have a unique system that links all of our counties through county conservation and county managed land. And there was a need maybe 10, 12 years ago to really amp up the environmental education aspect of that. So everything from actually connecting citizens and students to their natural resources to almost supplementing science education in certain school districts. And I got involved in that through the University of Northern Iowa, where I was at school, and I interned with the Blackhawk County Conservation Board. Okay. And that was kind of my first real experience of not just getting out myself, which I did as a kid all the time growing up in Des Moines and kind of the surrounding suburbs, but really getting kids out who, without that initial push, maybe wouldn't get out there and experience that natural resource. And so giving them that opportunity to, catch tadpoles in the water or go fossil hunting and kind of have their aha moment with their own area was definitely very impactful for me. And then I was leading canoe trips and starting water quality testing with different groups of students. And so the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. And we have 70,000 miles of interior rivers and streams in Iowa. So there's a lot to learn.
There's a lot to learn and a lot to see. And I understand water quality is a big issue. It's been a really big issue at University of Dubuque for many years. We've had a long-standing environmental science program. We're right on the Mississippi River, so we've got research boats and are preparing a lot of students for the kind of work that you've talked about. And have engaged in, whether it's working through the county or through the state or for the federal government in some cases. So tell me a little bit about what in Iowa, why is this such a large issue now? Why not 10 years ago or 20 years ago? What has happened to bring all of this energy and interest to focus now?
Sure.
Other than you being in your position,
I don't think I'll take any credit for that. But it is true that the conversations have shifted. Just in the last year, we're really talking about water.
And why is that?
All over the state. I mean, yeah, it's in the papers every week. And I guess I'm hoping that it's a shift in the thought process of kind of, these are our resources and we need to protect them. Iowa is essentially the most altered state in the United States. So we used to have a lot of prairies and wetland and oak savanna. And we really don't have any of that left. So our rivers and streams are kind of our last wild spaces. And due to just sort of the way that this state has evolved, we have some really cool cities. We have some really unique opportunities. We have some great universities, but we are still a very agriculturally intensive state. And you can only farm so hard, so long before you're going to start to see some differences occurring on the land. And that goes with anything. I think what we do to the land, there's going to be something that's going to come back to us. So whether it's development or farming or expansion of cities, Mother Nature is really strong, and when we think we can control her, she usually fires back pretty hard. And so I think it's just a lot of different things coming to a head, you know. Development is, especially if you live in Des Moines, I mean, we've got, I don't know if you guys drive around here, but there's construction going on everywhere. And so just the expansion of cities, the way that we farm to get the most we can out of our land, you know, there's a little bit of pushback in different situations. And so I think when we're talking about rivers and streams, it's everything from, you know, erosion and losing some of that precious topsoil that we really want to hold on to continue to be able to, you know, feed people, to recreation opportunities growing. People, paddling sports is a really fast growing activity all over the country, but now in Iowa we have done some dam modification projects that put in whitewater courses. And so now we have these adventure kayakers coming to the state, and they want to be able to use that. We've expanded our water trail system to get people out and kind of have the opportunity to canoe and kayak. And then we really see the economic impact and the quality of life impact of embracing these resources. You know, families want to be able to get out and enjoy these spaces, and then they're kind of learning that, oh, maybe they're not super clean, or maybe we don't have as many accesses as we'd like. And so then it kind of has some of these conversations of how can we value this as a resource, and not just something that our city grew up nearby.
Sure. So, well, let me ask you this. So you're a millennial, and you're talking to a lot of other millennials
Right.
here, and you're in the crossfire. I mean, what you do in some circles is, I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine is you're not invited to every Christmas party, I imagine, across
No.
the state, and then you can come to the University of Dubuque, by the way. We'd love to have you, but and it's a fun one. But what, you know, it requires a certain kind of strength of character to do what you do. In addition to a commitment to a cause,
Sure.
it requires a certain strength of character to do it. It's not easy being on the firing line or the front line
Right.
of these kinds of issues. So where does, obviously you've got that, where does that come from?
I guess, I mean, there's definitely that level of sort of tenacity that you have to kind of go in with it. You know, I grew up playing sports, and I'm sure there's a little bit of natural competitiveness in me that maybe drives some of that. But I think the bigger part of this conversation, and what I've found to be most helpful rather than going in ready to fight, is kind of the mentality of going in ready to listen. We have a really, really unique state, and it can be very polarizing at times, but I still, you know, I've lived in Iowa for 30 years. I plan to live here another 30 years. I think we all have a lot more in common than we don't. And so one of the things that has been my greatest asset is being willing to go talk to all kinds of different people and listen to all kinds of different people and really find out, you know, how they're connected to the resource and how it hits home for them. And for me, it's just been a really informative process. I'm a lifelong learner. I was a science major. I want to go find things out. And so I think that's kind of the perspective that I come from, is I want to learn more so that we can help make our state a better place. And I think water is a key part of that. I mean, we all need water. We need to value water. There are states around the country that would love to have the amount of water that we have. And it is something that truly connects us. So whether we're talking about public health, recreational opportunities, you know, economic development in small communities, I mean, there's something that hits that trigger for everybody. And so if we can have those conversations about rivers, I just think it'll make Iowa a better place.
So I'm hearing tenacity is a key kind of part of your leadership. Listening is a significantly important element of what it means to be a good leader. What are, if you were to say 3 other things that you think about, and you were talking to your other millennials here, what 3 other things do you think we need to be thinking about in various leadership capacities?
Sure. I'm all about collaboration. I think the ability to work well with others, and even groups that you don't know how you might even work together, as those opportunities come up, I think that's really important, to be able to collaborate and work with other groups, even if they're very different than you. And As far as leadership goes, I mean, people lead in very different ways. I've always been a lead by example person because I want to jump in and go get dirty or go play in the river, and that's kind of how I learn and experience those things. And so being able to connect other people to that, I think, is really, really important. So as you move forward and experience things, bring people along with you. And the other thing that I've been very fortunate is I've had a ton of amazing teachers, mentors, board members who are just, I mean, my best advice is to just never be in a room that you're the smartest person, because you're not learning anything. And so I go into a lot of rooms and a lot of meetings where there are people that are a lot smarter than I am, and that's been very beneficial.
That's good. That's good advice. And so you've had disappointments, I'm sure. And so, but the great thing about disappointments is we're always learning. If we have the right attitude, we learn from them. So over the course of your career, and if you're a tenacious person, you kind of keep at it. What has been maybe the most disappointing lesson, if that's a way to phrase it, or the hardest lesson that you've learned?
Sure.
If you want to share.
No, absolutely. Oh, we should all share our big falling on our face moments. They're good for everybody. I think one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, and we deal so much on the policy side, which can be very frustrating. I mean, the rulemaking process, and I think everyone could relate to the fact that politics in general can just be very frustrating, or they're just difficult to deal with sometimes. And that goes on at the state levels and local levels. I mean, people get frustrated with city council and their legislators, and it's not just the national stage. And so I think the most frustrating part for me, especially when I'm trying to, I'm a science person, I want to rationalize it, I want the logic, I want the statistics, and sometimes when we're dealing with politics or rulemaking processes, logic doesn't factor in. And so that is, for me, I think one of the biggest struggles is, there's a lot of other elements at play that kind of sometimes take away from what I think is very, basic. And I would think that, lots of people should feel this way, it makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense to everyone just because it makes sense to you. And so I've had more than one person when I'm dealing with some of my politics be like, stop pretending like logic factors in here, because it doesn't.
Okay, if logic doesn't factor into it. So, the question is, there's a guy by the name of James Davison Hunter that wrote a book called To Change the World, and he talks about, when we think of leadership, we think of generals and presidents, and all, but his argument is that people lead best within their sphere of influence.
Right.
And so, what do you say to a person that's got a home in Esterville, Iowa, and who's just, raising a family, doing the right thing, working to make ends meet, and they're listening to you, and they understand that there's some challenges, but certainly I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do. Well,
sure.
Hunter would say within our sphere of influence, we can. So hypothetically, what could that person in Esterville or Spencer or Storm Lake or you name the community, what can they do within their sphere of influence to impact the work that you and your organization are doing on a higher level policy-wise? What can they do to be involved?
Oh yeah, and that's, we get people talking, what can I do? They want to do something, and that's, we're a nonprofit organization, so we're all about grassroots. We're all about enabling your sphere of influence. And for us, I think that comes from basically the ability to, connect yourself to your environment and see yourself as part of it rather than from the outside looking in. And that sometimes really just involves getting out into it. We need to spend some time out in nature. We need to go see our resources, and because if we don't spend time with them, we're not going to value them. So getting them outside and getting kids outside, the mental, emotional, physical health implications are wonderful. Everybody needs vitamin D and fresh air to kind of feel sane. And so that's the first thing, which is super easy, and bring people along, take your kids out, take your friends out, do that kind of thing. And then the next step, and especially, millennials, young families, but really anyone, is to engage at the very local level. I mean, we're a policy group and we're trying to affect statewide issues, but it starts at the local level. I mean, if there's not that kind of support and connection, you know, in those smaller areas, it's not going to grow at a statewide basis. And so being able and feeling comfortable to email or call or sit down for coffee with a local elected official and just talk to them about the issues that you think are important, whether it is rivers or water quality, or you know, if you're worried about what's in your drinking water and you want to know more about it, you know, whatever it is that is important to you, to be able to feel comfortable connecting with your leaders. You know, we're constituents and we should be represented by all of our elected officials. We elected them, and they have, you know, an obligation to hear us out. And so I think just having sort of the fortitude and the, you know, a little bit of confidence to go in there, and, you know, your opinion does matter, one person's does, and sometimes they say that. If you get one legislator gets 3 or 4 calls on the same issue, they're going to pay attention to that issue, and it's only 3 or 4 phone calls. So really everybody can make a difference, and I think it's much easier to feel that way at the local level maybe than on the state or national.
Okay, so well, I'm going to end with this. You get the last word.
Oh.
So I want to thank you for being part of this. And so in your, during the course of the next 7.5 years, I don't know why I said 7.5 rather than 5 or 10, but let's just, so 7 years, because in the next 7 is the Hebrew number for perfection. Okay,
All right.
so there you are.
We'll
So
go with
during the
7.
course of the next 7 years, what would you, what is your vision and highest hope and aspiration for the state of Iowa and its rivers and streams? What would you like, if we meet again, you'd be able to say, Jeff, this has been accomplished.
Here's what we did, yeah. I would like to see us fund the Iowa Water and Land Legacy Trust. It can be known as IWIL, it can be known as lots of different things, but it's the 3/8 sales tax that essentially Iowans have voted for, and now we need our elected officials to vote to fund it. And it would be something close to $180 million of new generated revenue to go towards our natural resources, about 60% of it with an emphasis in water quality projects. And so that would be a huge first step for us. And then the other thing that is a focus to us that I think would have a huge statewide impact that I would love to see in the next 7 years is a statewide river restoration program for Iowa. So we have a statewide lake restoration program. State money gets put into it every year. Projects get prioritized and worked on. I would love to see that, a watershed approach for streams and rivers in Iowa, so we can start pinpointing where we see some of our biggest issues and then very intelligently allocating money to start working on those issues and see measurable improvements in whatever it is we're trying to do, whether it's improve water quality or, you know, habitat for wildlife or just access for individuals to have that. I think that would be a wonderful 7-year goal for the state of Iowa. We'd see some huge improvements all over the state.
I think that's a very worthy goal.
We'll work on it.
Molly, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Very nice to meet you.
You too.
Yeah.